I turned the corner, and the hallway didn't end. It just kept going. I was at work on the 4th floor, heading to the break room to grab a soda. I've made this turn 1,000 times. The break room door is supposed to be 10 feet away. I know exactly how many steps it takes, 7, maybe 8, to get from the corner of the main corridor to the vending machine. But today, there was no door. There was no wall. Just the same stretch of beige carpet, the same drop ceiling with its evenly spaced panels, and the same low electric hum of fluorescent lights stretching out into a yellow, infinite haze. I stopped. I looked behind me, expecting to see the elevator bank, the water cooler, the potted ficus tree that always looks like it's dying. The way I came was gone. Just another endless hallway, identical in every direction. The perspective lines didn't converge. They just ran parallel, disappearing into a point I could never reach. I didn't panic. Panic is for when you see a fire or a gun. This was something else. This was wrong on a fundamental level. I just felt heavy, like the air had turned into water, or like the gravity had been dialed up just enough to make moving an effort. I checked my phone. No signal, just a gray bar where the 5G usually sits. I put it back in my pocket. I took a step forward. Story 1. Delay. I walked. I kept my pace steady. Step, step, step. The hallway was empty. No doors, no intersections, no emergency exit signs with their glowing red LEDs. Just the hum. It was a sound that sat in the back of your teeth, a vibration that you only noticed when you focused on it. But something felt off with my hearing. It wasn't that the sound was strange, it was the timing. I took a step, and my boot hit the carpet. Thud! The sound came a split second late. It was faint, barely noticeable, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It was like watching a movie with bad audio sync. The visual of my foot hitting the ground happened, and then the audio followed a millisecond behind. The disconnect was jarring, like a stumble in my mind. I stopped walking. Silence. The absolute dead silence of a recording studio. I took another step. Thud. Again. The delay. I walked faster. Thud, thud, thud. The sound lagged behind me, chasing my footsteps like an echo that couldn't keep up, or like a delayed audio feed in a live broadcast. I stopped moving, planting my feet firmly on the carpet, but the sound kept going for 2 more steps. Thud, thud. Then, silence. I stood still. I looked at the lights overhead. They were flickering, but the flickering was wrong too. The light would dim, and a split second before it dimmed, the electric hum would change pitch. It would dip low, then the light would fade. The audio was preceding the visual. The cause was following the effect. I clapped my hands together. A sharp, loud test. Clap! I watched my hands. They touched at the exact same moment the sound registered. But the sound, it didn't come from my hands. It came from 3 feet in front of me, in the empty air. It felt like the sound was being projected from a speaker hidden in the wall, playing the track of my life just slightly out of sync with my movements. I clapped again, turning my head to watch for the source. Clap! This time, the sound came from behind me. I started running. I needed to find a door, a wall, a deviation in the pattern, something solid that proved this was still a physical place and not a projection. Slap, slap, slap. My footsteps were echoing all around me, coming from the walls, the ceiling, places I wasn't touching. The hallway became a cacophony of my own movement, a chaotic symphony of delayed impacts. I ran for a minute, then 2. The air didn't move. The sweat on my forehead didn't cool. The hallway looked exactly the same water stain on the ceiling tile. I kept passing it. Every 20 yards, there was the water stain in the shape of a boot. I passed it for the 10th time, the 11th, the 12th. I stopped. I bent down to catch my breath, my hands on my knees. I heard my breathing. Ha, ha. It was loud, ragged, desperate, but I wasn't breathing yet. I held my hand over my chest. My lungs were still. My diaphragm was relaxed. I wasn't gasping for air, but I could hear the gasp. The sound of my own exhaustion was playing on a loop, anticipating my body's need for oxygen before the need actually arose. The environment was predicting me. It was playing the sound file of Tired Runner before I had actually exerted myself enough to warrant it. I stood up straight. I held my breath deliberately. I pinched my nose. The sound of breathing continued for another 10 seconds. Ha, ha. Then it cut out. Mid-gasp, chopped off like a digital sample. The lights flickered. The hum spiked in volume, a high-pitched whine, then dropped to a low, steady thrum. The world around me seemed to shimmer. For a second, the walls blurred. The texture of the carpet lost its definition, becoming a blocky smear of beige. It was like looking at a low-resolution video blown up too big. I felt like I was buffering. I took a step forward to break the stasis. The world froze. My foot was in the air, mid-stride. The lights were stuck in the on position. The hum was stuck on a single low note, a held chord. I couldn't move my eyes. I couldn't blink. I was locked in a single frame of reality, suspended in amber. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a thick, physical blanket that smothered my thoughts. I hung there, waiting for the connection to re-establish. It felt like an hour. It might have been a second. Time had lost its ruler. Then, with a sharp click, everything snapped back on. My foot hit the ground. The sound played instantly. Thud. The delay was gone. The sync was restored. I exhaled. The air tasted stale, like recycled air from an airplane cabin, but the hallway was different. It wasn't beige anymore. It was yellow, a sick, damp, urine-yellow wallpaper that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Story 2. Repeat. The change was subtle at first. The walls were painted a darker, more nauseating shade of yellow. The carpet was worn, the nap worn down to the backing, revealing the concrete underneath in long, jagged strips. The smell changed too, from office coffee and floor wax to something older, wet drywall and copper. I started walking again. I didn't know what else to do. Standing still had caused the freeze. Moving seemed to keep the render alive. I passed a door. A brown wooden door with a small square window reinforced with wire mesh. I tried the handle. It turned. I opened it. It was a broom closet, a bucket, a mop, a shelf of cleaning supplies. I closed it. I kept walking. I was alert now. I was counting my steps. I was looking for patterns. 50 yards later, I passed another door. Brown wood, square window. I didn't stop this time. I just glanced at it. I walked further. The layout felt familiar. A fire extinguisher on the left, housed in a glass box. A patch of black mold on the right, near the baseboard. 50 yards later, fire extinguisher on the left, patch of mold on the right. I stopped. I turned around. The hallway behind me was identical. Fire extinguisher, mold, brown door. I turned back around. I walked toward the door. I knew it was a broom closet. I didn't need to check. I reached for the handle. I knew it was locked. I just knew. I tried it. Locked. I kept walking. I passed the extinguisher. I passed the mold. I reached the next door. I didn't try to open it. I just looked at it. I looked at the number scratched into the brass plate. 104. I walked. Next door. 104. I walked faster. 104. I ran. 104. The doors were appearing faster now. The distance between them was compressing. I passed the water stain on the ceiling. Then 5 seconds later, I passed it again. Then 2 seconds later. I was running through a loop of space that was shrinking, a hallway folding in on itself like an accordion. I stopped running and stood still. The loop didn't stop. The room around me began to cycle. The door appeared and vanished in a strobe-like flash. The extinguisher flickered in and out of existence next to me. The sound of the hum became a rapid pulsing. It wasn't that I was walking in circles. The space was refreshing. It was reloading the same assets over and over, placing them closer together to keep me contained, creating the illusion of forward momentum while actually trapping me in a shrinking box. I closed my eyes to stop the visual strobing. The hum of the lights changed rhythm. It wasn't a steady drone anymore. It was pulsing in time with the flickering. Hum, hum, hum. I realized the repetition wasn't a bug. It was a security measure. The system was overwhelmed. It couldn't generate new space, so it was recycling the old space. It was trying to keep me busy. It was trying to keep me from noticing that I wasn't moving at all. I opened my eyes. I was facing a corner. The hallway had ended abruptly in a T-junction that just stopped. There was a painting on the wall, a generic landscape of a mountain, blue sky, green trees, the kind of art you buy in a hotel clearance sale. I stared at it. I noticed a detail I hadn't seen before. There was a small figure in the painting, a person standing on the mountain. I leaned in closer. It was me. I was wearing the same clothes. I was standing in the same yellow hallway. In the painting, I was looking at a painting. I pulled back. I turned around to run, but the hallway was gone. I was standing in an open room, a large, empty lobby. The repetition had stopped. The frantic cycling was gone. It was quiet, too quiet. Story 3. Correction. I walked into the lobby. The floor was checkered linoleum, black and white. It was so clean it looked wet. It felt wrong to be here. It felt like I had stepped off the path. The hallway, with all its looping and repeating, that was the designated area. This felt like a maintenance room, a place where the code was exposed. There was a desk in the center, a sofa against the wall. I walked to the desk. It was empty, just a phone and a blotter. The phone was an old rotary style, black plastic, heavy. I ran my hand along the surface of the desk. It left a trail in the dust. I looked at the trail. It was fading. I watched, fascinated, as the dust particles seemingly flowed backward, covering the clean spot I had just made. The mark vanished. The surface became pristine, as if my hand had never touched it. I pressed my hand down hard. I smeared the dust, making a swirl pattern. I pulled my hand away. The dust repaired itself instantly. The particles snapped back into place, filling the gaps in the swirl. The system had corrected the anomaly. I was the anomaly. I walked over to the sofa. It was against the far wall under a window. I pushed the sofa. I dragged it across the linoleum. It made a terrible screeching sound. Scrap! I moved it 3 feet to the left. It was now blocking the path to the window. I let go. I turned around to look at my work. The sofa was back against the wall, under the window. I hadn't heard it move back. It was just there. I walked to the window. I tried to look outside. It was black. Not night sky black, just void black. No stars, no moon, no street lights. I touched the glass. A ripple spread out from my finger, like touching the surface of a pond. The glass was a membrane, a screen. I pushed harder. My hand went through, but I didn't feel air. I felt nothing. No cold, no wind, no pressure. I pulled my hand back. The hole in the glass sealed up. The surface became smooth again. I sat down on the sofa. I needed to think. I looked at the floor. There was a pattern in the tiles. I looked at the checkered black and white. I focused on one white tile. Second row, third from the left. I stared at it. I tried to imprint my will on it. I tried to make it black. I didn't touch it. I didn't move. I just thought. Turn black. I blinked. The tile was black. I stood up. I looked around the room. I felt a sense of vertigo, a sense of profound dislocation. The environment wasn't just reacting to my presence anymore, it was reacting to my intent. I realized then why the hallway was looping, why the sound was delayed, why the dust repaired itself. I wasn't in a physical space, I was in a rendering engine, and I was causing a lag in the processor. I was a heavy asset that the system couldn't quite manage, so it kept resetting my position, cleaning up my messes, and trying to smooth out the edges. I looked at the desk. The phone rang. It was a harsh, mechanical trill. Rang! Rang! I walked over to it. I picked up the receiver. Hello? I heard a voice, but it wasn't a person speaking. It was a synthesis, a text-to-speech program. Error 404, the voice said. Asset corrupted. Subject failed to render. What? I said. Who is this? Initiating purge, the voice said. Resetting coordinates. The line went dead. I looked at the room. The walls were starting to dissolve. The edges of the linoleum tiles were bleeding into each other. The black and white were mixing into a uniform gray. I felt a pulling sensation, like a magnet attached to my spine. I was being dragged backward toward the hallway. I tried to grab the edge of the desk. My fingers slipped right through the wood. It was intangible now. I was floating. I was being unspooled. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't want to watch myself disappear. I thought about my apartment. I thought about my front door. I tried to visualize the number on the door, 4B. I thought about the smell of the hallway, the old carpet. I felt a sudden lurch, a sensation of speed. I opened my eyes. I was standing in a hallway, beige carpet, drop ceiling, fluorescent lights. I looked down. There was a door in front of me, a brown door with a square window. I looked at the number on the plate, 104. I let out a breath. I was back. The loop had restarted. I reached for the handle, but I stopped. I looked at my hand. My edges were blurry. My skin looked unfinished, low resolution. I could see individual pixels on my knuckles. I wasn't back. I had just been placed back in the queue. I turned the handle. The door was locked. I stood in the hallway, and I waited for the lights to hum. They didn't hum. The silence was absolute. I realized then that the engine hadn't started up again yet. I was the first thing to load in this new cycle, and I wasn't a person. I was the glitch. I stood perfectly still, terrified that if I moved, I would fail to render again, and the system would decide I wasn't worth fixing.